Now, digital IDs, that's very interesting. There is a strong international push to get that happening. So, I mean, you may remember, I think it was in 2001, Tony Blair tried to bring in ID cards.
Oh, that lovely man.
That lovely man, yeah.
Do you know what? I'm really... Oh, sorry, I just had a little wash of nostalgia for Tone. Oh, what a tour.
Things can only get better.
For me and the Tony Blair Foundation. Not for profit. I'm paying myself £2.5 million a year. Yes, anyway, sorry.
So he tried to get that through, but there was a big pushback from the British people. We didn't want it. He couldn't succeed with that.
Why don't we want it? Because we're Brits and we've got a sort of border anyway, and we're sort of pretty chuffed with being Brits. And
the argument at the time
was one.
Yeah, the argument at the time was something like, "Are you prepared to arrest little old ladies who go to the shop without their ID card? If you're not, then basically it's just an extra burden on the middle class."
But was it? When they tried to bring it in during the pandemic, do you think that was Do you think they used the pandemic to bring it in, or do you think they genuinely thought,
I can give you some potential evidence on that. So the push for digital IDs was occurring well before the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I would point you to an organisation called ID 2020. Yeah. That was, despite the name, that was actually founded in 2016.
Right.
It was founded with seed money from various organisations, including some of the big auditors, the Rockefeller Foundation, Microsoft, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Oh, hang on a minute, I'm getting another flush of warm flush. Bill Gates.
And Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, in 2016.
So this was, okay. Wow.
They subsequently released papers saying, and you can check this out, that a future pandemic would be very useful for spreading digital IDs.
Yeah.
So just make sure that I didn't, turn that around. It's not that digital IDs will be good in combating a pandemic. A pandemic will be good for spreading digital IDs.
Right.
So another data point.
Can I just quickly ask, is that too controversial to go out on YouTube? Probably, isn't it? Are YouTube going to get upset?
Let's deal with that in the edit.
No,
I don't think.
Essentially, guys, what I'm trying to say is, every time we try and have a normal conversation, YouTube give us the hard strike. And you're basically just trying to dig out some information so that we can all be a bit better informed,
So there is nothing that I've said that you cannot...
So this is actually true, that Gavi and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, all of this stuff, they said in 2016...
I will send Alex a whole series of links, and he will be able to throw up on the screen a headline or basically the ID 2020 webpage.
Yeah.
He will be, I'm about to talk about Davos, and so I'll try and do it as carefully as I can.
No, I don't want it. I want all of this in, this whole conversation in, so it's fine. The point is... So let's just go back. 2016, they started this thing called ID 2020, and they stated that a pandemic of any kind would be a useful opportunity to bring in digital IDs. And our dear friend Klaus Schwab, who's running the World Economic Forum, is really keen on all of this stuff. He needs to get a new costume, but that's beside the point. Okay. Back to there.
Okay, and the second data point is going to be the Davos event that world leaders attend every year.
Where Klaus Schwab does his book reading thing. Yes, very good, yes.
So in 2018, the theme of that event was digital IDs. Nobody needs to take my word for this. You can go on to the World Economic Forum YouTube page, and they've got all the speeches.
Why does Klaus want us all to have a digital ID? So you're going to tell me, aren't you? Yeah.
I can give you some of the stated reasons, and I can speculate beyond that. But one of the interesting things to come out of that 2018 Davos meeting was a policy paper. From memory, it's called something like Digital IDs, a New Social Contract. And if you go to the World Economic Forum, you type that in, you will get that policy document that comes up.
They blocked me.
Right, okay. That was basically a policy document that gave governments a series of initiatives to go off and deliver on. Dutifully, I note that all the governments did go off and start delivering on that policy agenda.
So why did Boris, fearless one, Boris, go from saying I'd rather chew and eat an ID, swallow my ID, to going we love them?
So
did he have a little trip to Davos?
Yeah,
Or did so- or
you
did-
can,
or
you
is-
can make arguments for all of these things. So, look, let's make the argument for the last thing, that the debt levels going up and the inflation and so on. It sounds really sinister, doesn't it? But you could present it to a government minister. You could say, if we don't do this, then the government is going to collapse and we're not going to be able to pay pensions.
But there's a £3 trillion pension pot, is there not?
Well, no, actually, the way it works is that you pay money into the system and it goes immediately out to pay pensions at the time. You don't save up your pension through the system. It's
Right.
then waiting for you.
Okay.
So you can make the argument.
Or
that-
not.
Yeah. You can make the argument these things have to be done.
Yeah.
When it comes to digital IDs, again, you can make arguments for them. You can say,
Give me a good argument for a digital ID.
well, convenience, protect your identity. So those are ones. So identity theft is something that happens, and if you've got a government issued digital ID, it makes it harder. And the convenience thing is that it will tie together all government services. So, for example, if you've got any vehicles licensed to you, that can go on it. Your MOT status, that can be linked to it. Your GP records, your tax records,
I said,
all of
give
these.
me a good reason. I want a good reason, Dan. Not a. Well, the government can know absolutely everything about everything you do.
Yeah. Where I start to get concerned is when it starts to go beyond those limited government functions. So, for example, and I mentioned that this came out of Davos 2018. The governments were given their instructions to go away and work on this. And actually, if you want to go to the government webpage, you can just type in digital identity next steps, and you can see that they are working through this. They are following that.
Why
that
are they
policy
listening
proposal.
to what Klaus wants? Why is everyone jumping on a jet plane going over
So
to
that's a
Gamble?
question I can't answer. Why are they following this agenda? All I can tell you is that they are following this agenda. They are demonstrably following this agenda.
Yeah.
Now, where I start to get concerned is when you go to the next step on some of this stuff.
Okay.
So France is also working on a digital ID system, and they've said that social media accounts are going to have to tie into this digital ID.
Yeah.
That's a very easy requirement to make. So,
But you could upgrade your social credit score by surrendering, like all the
well,
French
this
do.
is where it starts to come on to. So, if governments start to push or governments start to require that every time you have an internet service provider account or a social media account or an email account or a messaging account, you have to link it to your government ID. That basically gives government the ability to see everything you do, who you communicate with, and what your political views are.
But aren't they doing that already? I mean, I could call me cynical, but I think the government know everything you have ever produced digitally anyway, and that they, I'm convinced that they look into things,
So companies like Google certainly do have that information.
Yeah, well,
They
they
are-
do, because you have two different. If I sat next to, Johnny Liberal with the blue hair and the BLM kneeling, and we both Googled the same thing, we would get different results from Google, don't they? They have an algorithm.
Yeah.
They're it's. What I'm trying to say is, are we not already? Is it not already in existence?
So that,
it's just not
that is one of
formally?
the arguments for this stuff, is that because this information is known anyway, what does it matter if government have it as well? I would push back on that, say, if I want to, I can de-Google. I
Yeah.
can get a third-party phone. Apple and Microsoft, for their faults, they get very little revenue from selling data, whereas Google, that's their entire business model. So, and you can go further. You can go to Linux-based systems or whatever you want to do. So you can opt out of Google if you want to. You won't be able to opt out of a government ID. That will be a requirement.